Welcome back to episode 3 of Blood and Guts Radio with Dorian Yates. Dorian, how's it going, man?
Hey, Robbie, how are you, mate? Things are going good. Working hard as always, you know.
Well, Dorian, you gave some great information at the Blood and Guts seminar. Can you go ahead and give us an update on the status of your supplement company?
Yeah, we're just finalizing everything, tweaking some of the formulas and the labels and everything. So we're pretty close to completion, and they're going to be in GNC very soon. So hopefully within the next 3 or 4 weeks we'll be in GNC.
For those of you who want to watch the Dorian Yates videos, go to the Muscular Development website and go to videos and go to Robbie TV, and you can actually look under the section, and there's Blood and Guts Seminar. There's actually 3 files, 1, 2, and 3. I think it's on the second page, but if you haven't seen those videos, you got to check those out. So, Dorian, I'm looking at the MD website, and it looks like you have a couple of questions, and I'm really interested in hearing what you have to say about these. So, if you don't mind, let's go ahead and get some of these questions answered. So, Dorian, the first question I have is, how many times do you think a bodybuilder should compete in a year? This particular person asked that since you only competed once a year, he wanted to know if competing more than once a year was detrimental.
Well, it depends if the question is how many shows should you do, or how many times should you prepare for a show? Because I did several Grand Prix shows and so on after the Mr. Olympia, but I was already in shape, so it didn't require a separate preparation time. And I think ideally once a year, you know. You could do twice a year, you could do 2 separate shows a year, but then you're making it very difficult to make progress between the shows because there's so little time there. You're getting ready for a contest. In order to get in real contest condition, you're going to be restricting your calories for a period of time, whatever that is. Most people would be 10, probably 12 weeks. So we're looking at 3 months there, where you're restricting your calories in order to reduce your body fat and get into contest shape. And under those circumstances, realistically, you're not going to build any muscle. You're not going to make any great improvements to your physique as far as building muscle, or, even to improve your shape, you've got to build muscle. So you're not going to make a great deal of progress in that period. In fact, with the best will in the world, doing everything properly, you're still probably going to lose a little bit of muscle. We strive to lose the excess body fat and get the body fat very low while maintaining muscle. That would be ideal. You're definitely not going to build any, and you may lose a little. So that means there's 3 months there that you're not making any progress, any real physical changes. And then it's probably going you're going to need a period of time after the contest to recuperate a little bit and to get back to point A, as it were. So there's probably like 4 months period where you're not making any progress. If you're going to do that twice a year, it's going to be very difficult to make major changes in your physique. So if you're at a point where you're happy and you're just maintaining, which some guys in the professionals do, they're looking at a career and maybe they're not making big changes between the competitions, so they're looking at the dollars. But to make progress, I think it's difficult if you're doing more than 1 show a year.
So, Dorian, the question I have is, after a show, what would you do to recuperate both mentally and physically after a show? And additionally, a lot of bodybuilders take some time off after competing, but you weren't known to take a lot of time off. You want to comment on that briefly?
Not as much as I should have done, probably. I didn't take a long time off after a competition because I was very driven, and also I enjoyed training. So probably, if I'm really honest, I probably took like a week off after training, and I'd go on vacation for a week or 2. But even on vacation, I was finding the nearest gym, and I was still working out, albeit not full intensity, but still pretty heavy. Is that ideal? Probably not. You could afford to take a little bit more time off there just to mentally and physically recover. But a couple of weeks is enough. I hear about other professionals taking 2 months off, 3 months off. I really don't see the point in that. You're just going to regress, So there's 2 or 3 months out of the year you haven't made any progress. In fact, you've gone backwards. And then, again, you've got to do another month or so probably to get back where you were in the first place. So there's 4 months where you haven't made any progress. I don't really see the point in that. And like I said in the seminar, I enjoy training. So, if I enjoy doing something, why would I not want to do it for 3 months?
So, Dorian, what is your opinion of using knee wraps and elbow wraps for, let's say, heavy squatting or bench pressing?
I never really use the kind of heavy duty powerlifting wraps. Sometimes I just use the slip-on wraps just to give a little bit of warmth around the joint and so on. But I don't believe in supporting the joint too much because, if you're going to support it, there's no reason for it to get stronger. And you want your tendons and your ligaments and everything to get stronger as you progress, as your muscles get stronger. And I think, really it's just used as an ego thing so you can lift more weight. But I was never in the gym to see how much weight I could lift. I was in the gym to see how much stress I could put on the working muscles and how much growth I could stimulate. And I did that by lifting the weights with my muscles, not lifting it with aids to make it easier. Sure, if you put a big spring under your ass when you're squatting, you'd squat more as well, but it's not going to translate into any more progress. So I don't see the point.
So, Dorian, what about if a person has some previous wear and tear? They had some a knee injury or an elbow injury, or they have some kind of, let's say, arthritis, from heavy lifting all those years. Do you still recommend them using wraps?
Well, like I said, I used to use the slip-on wraps, which don't give you really that much support, but they put a bit of warmth around the area, so you get more blood around there. But if you've got an existing injury, the best thing to do is do whatever it takes to heal that injury, rather than trying to use props to get through it. And unless your chiropractor or your doctor recommends it for some reason. If you've got wear and tear on the joint, like on the knee, if you tie the wraps too tight, it's going to compress. It's going to compress the kneecap and make the injury worse. So I don't see any real benefit there, unless you're a powerlifter and you're going for a maximum rep.
Dorian, could you talk about the exercises that you found least effective and why you decided not to include them into your training routine?
The exercises that I didn't do, that may be generally used, just because I didn't really see the point in them. Let's see, upright row. I never did upright rows, very rarely did upright rows, just because, there's some deltoid there, some lateral deltoid, there's some traps, and maybe some brachialis and then some forearms involved. So it was not specific to anything, and I just felt there were better exercises for the traps, there were better exercises for the lateral delt, I didn't really see the point in the exercise. Another exercise I never really did was lunges. I think they've got great applications, for sports and stuff like that, for balance and everything, but again, I didn't think it was directly hitting the muscles. I wanted to work the quads and get better results from hack squats or leg press and so on. It's very difficult to go to real failure on lunges because of the balance and everything.
What about bench press? I know you weren't really a big believer in doing a lot of bench press.
Bench press again was one of the exercises that we all start with, right? But pecs were not an easy area for me to develop. And the bench press weren't doing a whole lot for me. My front delts tend to be very strong, so they were taking a lot of the brunt of the exercise there. And I did some reading, and the function of the pecs is to bring the upper arm down and across the body, and the range of motion with the bench press is quite small while you're working in that range. And you get better range on a low decline, on a shallow incline, and so on. And I felt those exercises more. So I think I pretty much dropped bench press out of my routine a couple of years into training, I think.
Okay. The next question I have is regarding European training, and this guy wanted to know why he thought that, he said he looked at some of these pictures, and a lot of Europeans, they have just an amazing conditionings that he feels that the Americans don't have. He just wanted to know why you thought that the Europeans have superior conditioning to Americans.
Well, I think, things are changing in Europe. We're generally a little bit behind the States, so things are catching up, but I still think there's a bit of more of a kind of a working mentality here, or a blue-collar mentality, if you want to call it that, where guys are still training old school, training hard and heavy. I see a little bit less of that in the States. But, it's, as I said, we've got a lot of big health fitness gyms and everything over here, so the same shift is happening here. And I think as far as condition goes, I think the condition of bodybuilders in amateurs generally that I've seen, if you look at the World Championship amateurs, the conditioning of the guys, okay, they're not as big, but if you look at the conditioning, it's actually superior to professionals. And I think that's wrong, A professional should be better than an amateur in all aspects. But the pros, it seems to shift. It may seem funny. People might think it's funny me saying this, being as everyone kind of all said I was the first mass monster. But it was never my goal to go into a competition as big as possible. I actually competed a little bit lighter than I could have done because I wanted to get the conditioning as well. So for me, it was the whole package. It was the balance, muscle size, and conditioning was very important. And I think that's lacking a little bit in the pros nowadays.
One of the things that you mentioned at the Blood and Guts seminar that I thought was really interesting was that, your main focus for every show was really your conditioning. And, like I said, even though, you're always one of the biggest guys on stage, your main goal was really, like I said, conditioning. You want to speak about that for a little bit, Dorian?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I was training for muscle size, but I wanted to come into the competition in really great shape as well. So in order to do that, maybe I had to sacrifice a little size and fullness. It was once I started training for a competition, I was just thinking about getting into that kind of really hard condition, and I had a lot of muscle size. So I'm not saying I wanted to sacrifice it, but it wasn't my goal to just simply come into the contest as big as possible. I wanted to come in super condition and with as much size as possible in that condition.
The next question I have, Dorian, is about protein sources. This person wanted to know, what was your predominant protein source when you were dieting? Was it mostly red meat, or was it mostly a combination of chicken and fish, or what was your predominant protein source?
I think it's good to have a variety of protein sources. They all got slightly different amino acid profiles and so on. So I think it's good to vary it. But I did lean, just because it's a personal preference, I leaned more towards, had a lot of egg whites, chicken breast, turkey breast, and if I had beef, it was generally very lean beef. So I had a variety of fish. I wasn't a big lover of fish, so that was more of an occasional thing, just personal preference really. But I do think beef is superior to fish and chicken with its amino acid content, and you do tend to feel, at least I do, feel a little bit stronger if I've got some red meat in the diet. So one of my meals, even pre-contest, would have been red meat, but lean ground beef, which you can do a lot of things with. You can cook it in different ways,
As far as your fat source, Dorian, did you get most of your fats from olive oil or red meat, or where did you get your fat sources from?
I got the fats from the egg yolks and the proteins and stuff like that, and I had some essential. I used to supplement with some essential omega oils, and then getting ready for a contest, I would use small amounts of MCT oil just as an alternative source to carbs, but it wasn't like a high fat diet. it was a balance there. But I used some MCT oils.
So the next question I have for you, Dorian, is that in all your DVDs you were seen doing Nautilus pullovers and hammer strength pull downs, but in your book it says that you would do only one of these exercises before moving on to barbell rows. Could you let me know if you do both or one of these exercises per sessions?
Either or, it's good to mix things up. But generally, I did both. I would do the reason I did a pullover is because it works your lats without the biceps. If you're doing a pull down, pull up rows, there's a good chance your biceps are going to fail before the lats have, because the lats are much bigger, stronger muscle, and you're kind of limited by the strength of the biceps because they may give way, before the lats have really been taxed 100%. So that's why I would do the Nautilus pullovers first, just because they would exhaust the lats without any involvement from the bicep. So they went up to the second and third exercise. The biceps were still fresh and the lats were somewhat exhausted, so there was a better chance that I would actually fail with the lats than just failing with the biceps before the lats.
So, Dorian, were you a big believer in dumbbell pullovers, or did you strictly use Nautilus pullovers?
The reason that the Nautilus pullover is better than a dumbbell pullover is because of the range of motion. With a Nautilus pullover, you're going more or less 180 degrees, all the way from the top. Take the machine all the way down into your waist, where a dumbbell pullover, once you get to your chest, there's no more resistance anymore, the resistance falls off, and there's quite a lot of stress on the triceps as well with a dumbbell pullover. If you haven't done dumbbell pullovers for a while and you do them, your triceps are probably going to be sore the next day because the long head of the tricep is working quite hard on that exercise. So, not to say that it's not useful. If I didn't have a Nautilus pullover machine, I would definitely think about doing the dumbbell pullovers first, and that's what I do with my clients. If we're training in a gym that doesn't have that machine, which not many gyms do, let's face it, I would do the dumbbell pullover first, because it's still you're still not using the biceps very much on the exercise. You're using triceps, and it's not an absolute full range of motion like the machine. But you're still working your lats without the biceps, so that's the idea,
So, Dorian, when will Dorian Yates Nutrition be available in the U.S., and can you explain the product line you're going to be carrying?
They're going to be available by early mid-July, and we're going through GNC and bodybuilding.com, so they'll be there mid-July. We're starting with 4 products. One is a protein product, of course. Nothing revolutionary about a protein product, but it's the one thing that I recommend to everybody. Everybody that's working out with weights needs more protein and, of a high quality. So the protein supplement we got is a combination of whey and micellar casein, and it's cold processed, so it's in its natural state, which I think is important. And the flavoring, which I've worked on personally, I was in there in the lab with the guys to get this the way we wanted it, and I think the flavoring is second to none. So you've got a great product. It's cold processed. There's a combination of proteins, which I think is important, because you take whey in isolation, it tends to be absorbed very quickly, and a lot of it gets wasted. So it's good to combine it with the casein, which is more slowly digested. You get a better release of amino acids then for a longer time. So that's the protein. Then we've got a gainer type product. That's the same protein matrix, and the carbohydrates are a combination of complex carbs rather than simple carbs like maltodextrin that some companies use in the gainers. Then we've got the almost legendary Nox pump, which in Europe got this legendary status, like pre-training nitric oxide formula, but it also has some very good stimulant properties and some nootropic properties, concentration levels and everything like that, and it's very popular in Europe. And we've taken that product and reflavored it because the taste was pretty bad, although people didn't seem to care. It's very effective, but actually the flavor is pretty good now. And then the 4th product is Fat Burner, which has got some pretty unique ingredients in, which we can go go into later, maybe.
I was able to talk to you a little bit at the Blood and Guts seminar about your pre-workout supplements, and one thing that you told me that I thought was interesting was that you're not really a big believer in harsh stimulants. Could you explain about that a little bit?
Yeah, but it's combined with other compounds in such a way that you don't get that crash later on. I mean, back in the day, I used to use the ephedrine, caffeine, aspirin stack and stuff like that, which was very popular and effective back in the 90s. But after a while of using it, I really, I could never use it now because it just makes me feel like crap later on. You know, you get that come down, you get that crash later on, and you don't get that with this product. You seem to, you feel very mellow later on just because of the synergy of the things that are in there, I think.
And when is that going to be available in the United States?
That's going to be available mid-July.
Dorian, one thing I liked about when we had talked about your upcoming Dorian Yates product line is that, it's not everything in the kitchen sink. It's not one of these products where you're going to have 30 different, ingredients in one formula. And everything that you're putting out, all the ingredients, are backed up by, clinical studies, and you're using the exact dosages found in these studies.
Yeah, by research, and we've got a medical team in UK that overlook things, not just from a legal standpoint and a formulation and effective. And these guys came up with some very good formulas, and then we had some people in the States as well, working together with them. You can see there's only 4 products for now, and that's because each category that I bring a product out in, I want to feel that it's the best that it can be at that point, rather than bringing out 20 different products, which maybe I don't necessarily believe in. So we're starting with 4 products, which I think are the best in the categories that they're in, and then we'll be releasing other products as we go along, as they're finalized. We're still working away in the background, looking at different compounds and different combinations and things like that, so we can come up with something that maybe hasn't hit the market before.
So we had also talked about, your pre-workout supplements. You have what's called neurotropics, and I know neurotropics are big in Europe, but for us in the States, could you explain a little bit about neurotropics?
Well, I don't know if it's the correct term, but it's basically, it works on your brain chemistry, so mood enhancement and concentration levels and things like that, which are very important. You need to be focused when you're working out, and if your mood's better, you're gonna get a better workout. So we're hitting it from different angles. You've got blood flow there to the muscles. You've got blood flow to the brain. Stimulating, changing the brain chemistry, so your mood's elevated and your concentration levels are better, and so on. So we're not just hitting it from. It's not just a stimulant. It's not just a nitric oxide formula. It's hitting it from different angles.
And the last question I have for you, Dorian, is actually fairly interesting. Is that this guy says that he's followed the advice of the former champions such as Larry Scott, Frank Zane, Dave Draper, and Bill Purr in regards to training, because they had a perspective that is quite different than younger champions, more wisdom, if you will. Many of them say that they wish you would have avoided training so heavy during your prime. They felt that you might have overtrained and caused injuries and damages and ended your career prematurely. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's something I've addressed probably a few times, and I don't think there was any fault in the training methods, or if people watch my DVD, they can see the kind of form I'm using. So I'm using what people might consider to be heavy poundages, but they're being moved in a controlled manner, very strict form. There's no swinging or anything like that. So it wasn't the training methods, it wasn't the exercises or the weights I was using. What was detrimental for me was just the fact that I never wanted to, I didn't really have an off day. I didn't take much rest and things like that. And I continued to train very heavily during the pre-contest period. And that's when I got injured, during the pre-contest period, when I take in less calories, not as rested, body fat's lower, maybe slightly dehydrated, you don't sleep as well on a low-calorie diet. So that makes you more vulnerable to injury. And also, as we mentioned earlier on, you're not going to build any muscle getting ready for a contest just because calorie level's not there. So there's no real need to train, at that level of intensity to beyond failure. So if I could go back and change anything, I would simply take it down a gear, getting ready for a contest as far as the intensity the last couple of months, and just shift it to just trying to maintain muscle, which is a lot easier than building muscle in the first place, so it's not necessary to be training beyond failure. So that's one thing I recommend to people now, that they don't kind of overtrain in terms of intensity when they're on limited calorie intake. So that's one thing that I learned, and I would change if I could. I wouldn't increase the workouts. I wouldn't increase the number of sets. I wouldn't increase the rep range or anything like that. So I'd still train heavy. That's what built the muscle in the first place, and that's what's going to keep it there. But I wouldn't go over that red line. I wouldn't risk injury. But I was that driven, and it was that drive that got me from a little backstreet gym in England where most people hadn't even heard of bodybuilding to be Mr. Olympia. So it's a bit hard for me to turn that off. I was like a race car driver that just always had his foot on the pedal. I didn't slow down for the corners, which probably I should have done.
So Dorian, also at the Blood and Guts seminar, I noticed that you had a Ultimate Edition DVD. And, I've seen the first Blood and Guts CD. Could you explain a little bit about the Ultimate Edition?
Yeah, a lot of people are probably familiar with the Blood and Guts training DVD, and a lot of people ask me why don't you come out with another training DVD? And I'm just like, I'm never in this sport for just to make a quick buck, and I'm like, there's no point to make another training DVD because there it is, that just sums it up. It doesn't need any commentary. So that's the training DVD. That's part of a two-disc set. The second disc is pretty much all the competitions that I've done, bar I think my first amateur competition. So there's the British Championship in '86. That was my first British Championship. There's footage from that. There's footage from the British Championship in '88 when I turned professional, and from all the pro shows, all the Olympias, pretty much all the Grand Prix, and some guest posing and some interviews and stuff like that haven't been seen before. So the footage from the '86 British and so on is not great quality, but I think it's very interesting. It's the first time that I've sat down and watched through all my competitions in one go. So I think it's pretty interesting for people to watch.
Dorian, I want to thank you for completing the third edition of the Blood and Guts podcast. And for all the MD listeners, keep posting those questions. And Dorian, we'll see you again in about 2 weeks.
Okay, just keep the questions coming in, and speak to you soon.